Blast off. Hello.
Hi, friends.
How are you?
Hope your week is mediocre.
There's a professional place around here. I just burped into the microphone.
It's all right. I'm sitting here talking with a mouthful of nerd clusters. Oh, me. So, this week, we're hitting you with another installment of Spooky States.
Yeah.
Brittany, which state are we traveling to?
Georgia.
Georgia. I'm not gonna lie. I was kind of excited about this one.
Yeah, I got kind of soaked on it.
And like I told you, I wrote this one.
Mm-hmm.
And again, my fingers were flying. And I felt like I was doing so much work. And then when I got to the end of it, it
was like, where'd all those pages go?
How many pages is it? Hold on. 5 pages. That's it.
Oh my goodness.
That's it. However, I can kind of elaborate more into it. Also, the books that I was telling you about I had.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 whole books.
Oh my gosh.
2 whole books on Haunted Savannah, America's Most Spectral City, Savannah Specters, and Other Strange Tales. You know what?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't fucking use them. Oh, I dropped it.
Look at you go.
My bad.
What do I have? I have one somewhere over there. That's a Savannah book.
I read them, not all of them, but I read, what was relevant to my thing.
Yeah. It's hard to use a book and write versus a website and write. Because like I told you, like when I'm writing episodes, I've got my source material on, like I've got it split screen. And I've got my source material one side and my word on the other. And I'm reading and rewording and, just like using the bits that I feel are relevant, mixing sources. It's a lot, but.
Oh, all right. We want to get into it.
Show.
All right. So, like I said, I've been so excited to do this Georgia episode since we decided to start this Spooky State series. When you search hauntings in Georgia, you're going to notice...
Why are they all Savannah?
Right. You're going to notice that most stories are going to come out of Savannah. I was fortunate enough to have taken a trip there in 2022. I very quickly fell in love with the city.
Mm.
It's a city like no other. There's a ton of culture, gorgeous views, so much history. And I'm not generally one to be a history buff.
Yeah.
But like the history there is very, very interesting. Mm-hmm. I could go on and on for days. And all of these places that I've mentioned in my episode, I didn't even dip hardly at all into the history because I knew if I did, this would be a 30-page situation.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing that the biggest thing about Savannah is that it is known to be one of the most, if not the most, haunted cities in the country. Yeah. And why is that, may you ask? Well, the city is a big port town. We learned while we were there. It's like I feel like it was like top 3.
Yeah. See, I didn't realize it was a port town.
Oh, yeah. Slaves were shipped over on boats. Mm-hmm. So, you got to kind of account they jumped ship.
Yeah.
Things like that. Any conclusions that you want to draw from that, probably true.
Yeah.
Also, there's a large number of Jewish refugees that came over, and that might have been where my statistic came from, is that it was like the second largest from like New York or something. TJ would be able to tell you. Mm-hmm. But like a lot of Jewish refugees came into the country by way of Savannah. Mm-hmm. And my first place that I'm going to talk about, there was a huge population of Jewish people. Huge. While you're there, you're going to notice that there are several cemeteries around. The cemeteries used to be much bigger. The city has grown so fast that it has literally had to be built on top of graves. Graves have had to be moved, and then some of them just got built over.
Yeah.
So, there was no other place for it to go. So you can imagine that the spirits of these people are pretty angry that they were disturbed and most likely forgotten.
Yeah.
So, and like we said on the Florida episode, a lot of the residual hauntings and the things that you're going to feel there are because of the land and not the specific buildings.
And we have, because our history is so expansive, I would say. Maybe not so much here in America, but, definitely in the UK. That history goes back.
Yeah.
But, there's no telling where bodies have been buried.
Right. I mean, you think about it. Anywhere you're standing, you could be standing on top of somebody.
Right, because before our generation, millions of people have died.
Oh, yeah.
So, they all had to go somewhere.
Right. Okay, so we're going to get into it. My first one is the Bonaventure Cemetery. Now, first of all, I'll get there. Located, I'm real excited and real passionate about this, if you can't tell. So this is located a mere 3-ish miles from downtown Savannah along the Wilmington River. It's the most beautiful and possibly largest cemetery that I have ever, and this is weird to say, ever had the pleasure of seeing and going to. Mm-hmm. It rests on 160 acres. It's full to the brim with final resting places, live oaks with Spanish moss, which is my all-time favorite. My lock screen on my phone is literally from Bonaventure Cemetery.
Yeah. And that's how you can tell you've entered Florida, is there's Spanish moss everywhere. Yeah. But don't touch it, because it's got bugs.
It's got bugs. Anyway, we didn't take a guided tour there, but there are tours available. I think there was one going on while we were there. I don't know that it's a haunting situation. And I'll get more into that here in just a second, but they do tours and kind of note, because there's quite a few notable people there. Mm-hmm. But the place just radiated with energy. As we walked through the pathways, I felt as though I was being watched, but not in a scary stalkerish way. Mm-hmm. The dead were definitely with us, and they all had stories to tell. Some tombs or plots or headstones were very lavishly decorated. Some were very simple, but I definitely felt the importance of each and every one of them. I've read that an environmentalist and writer by the name of John Muir, M-U-I-R, camped there for 6 days in the cemetery in 1867. In one of his books, he described the cemetery in the most perfect way that I could ever come up with. He said, Bonaventure is called a graveyard, a town of the dead, but the few graves are powerless in such a depth of life. The rippling of living waters, the song of birds, the joyous confidence of the flowers, the calm, the undisturbable grandeur of the oaks, mark this place of graves as one of the Lord's most favored abodes of life and light. And when I read that, it just I felt it, it's breathtaking, honestly.
Yeah.
Now in my time there, I didn't really experience any hard evidence of haunting. Nor did I get any haunting stories from here. When I searched, there's really I couldn't find any actual hauntings that take place in the actual cemetery. It's just based off of the people that are resting there now, but they're in different places. But when you walk through there, you know that you're not alone. Yeah. There were a few times that we'd be walking and I could sense that someone was walking off in the distance with us. And, I would think that I would catch something out of the corner of my eye, or I would quote unquote hear someone, but when I look, obviously I'm not going to see anything. I never do.
Right. That's earlier, 2 hours ago, I was sitting here while you were talking, and a black shadow just kind of walked.
Don't do that to me.
Yeah. I was going to wait until you left, but
don't do
I'm
that
sitting
to me.
here and I was like I opened my eyes and it just, and I was like,
okay.
Just another day here on the hill.
All right. I wasn't able to find any stories anywhere about specific hauntings that happen here, but there are 1,000,001 stories on the residents, some famous, most not, and their stories. I just wanted to throw this in here as it was honestly my favorite part of our time there in Savannah. And I definitely will share pictures. I'm excited to share those pictures with you guys. So that was my first one. You want to go for your first one? This first one you did, we went to.
Yeah. So my first one is the Pirate's House, which was built on the property that once housed the Trustees' Gardens, which was the first public agricultural experimental garden. In about 1753, Georgia was becoming established, and the need for this garden no longer existed, and it was redeveloped as a residential area. With Savannah being a seaport town, there was an increasing need for an inn, and so one of the first buildings constructed on this newly developed site was an inn for the sailors. The inn quickly became a rendezvous for pirates and visiting sailors from across the seven seas. The building remained for many, many years until it fell into disuse post-World War II. The property was purchased in 1945 by the Savannah Gas Company, and initially the building was going to be demolished. However, it was saved by the wife of the president of the gas company, Mrs. Molly Hillier.
Molly or Mary?
Mary, sorry. It's getting about that time. Mary and other local ladies decided to restore General Oglethorpe's vision of Savannah. This was the first renovation of the Pirate's House, and with her imagination, perseverance, and her skill, she was able to renovate the building into the restaurant that it is today. According to the restaurant's website, today the Pirate's House welcomes many visitors from around the world. We are a full-service restaurant, bar, and event space where you can bring the family for a great Southern meal and a fun time visiting with our pirates. We uphold the traditions started by previous owners and strive to provide a uniquely Southern dining experience in a historic atmosphere, but also in an apparently haunted atmosphere as well. Back when the Pirate's House was a gathering spot for all kinds of unsavory individuals, it was a place that most people didn't want to go into, but many men walked into the bar for a drink and then would wake up on a ship a few hundred miles offshore. These men were shanghaied and had no choice but to work on the boat or be thrown overboard or be sold to other sea captains. In the basement of the Pirate's House, there was a tunnel that led from the rum cellar to the river street. Now covered over, the tunnel was used to carry these men through to the ships. Prior to the tunnels being closed off, many people would report hearing voices and moans coming from the tunnel. That said, I will include that James Caskey of Cobblestone Tours said that the tunnel might never have even been real. But besides the disembodied voices in the potentially real tunnel, it has also been reported that shadow people and other apparitions have been seen walking across the dining rooms. Staff who have been working alone have reported feeling as though they were being watched, with many saying that more often than not, they would turn around and see a seaman standing there looking directly into their eyes before he would slowly dissipate into nothing. Footsteps have also been heard throughout the restaurant on quiet nights, with the distinct sound of heavy boots walking on the plank floors having spooked more than one unsuspecting person. Even folks who have been walking by the Pirate's House have posted photographs of alleged spirits standing in the windows, but many have been explained away as the type of glass, reflections, or a gamut of other natural explanations. A popular story that seems to have no fact to it, though, is that Captain Flint of Treasure Island died in the house, and many claim to have interacted with him. But the problem with this, though, is that this famous captain wasn't real to begin with and was just a work of fiction.
Oh, nice. So this restaurant, we did eat there. We sat right next to the kitchen. It was honestly a really cool experience because they did play up the whole pirate situation to it. There were little places where there was carve outs in the wall where they would have hidden or treasure boxes and stuff like that. It was really cool. And our little waitress, what I figured out, kind of really any big tourist place. You've got people from all walks of life and from all over that work there.
Yeah.
The waitress that we had was familiar with Nashville. And it was a really cool. She actually, I want to say she was familiar with Murfreesboro, which is a lesser known town here.
Yeah, it's one of the, what do they call it? It's one of the suburbs of Nashville.
Yeah. But it was a cool experience. I didn't really experience a whole lot there. The food that we got was fantastic. It was highly recommended to us by someone that TJ and I both know. I had posted on Facebook trying to figure out where to eat.
Yeah, I remember that.
I should have looked into this other place that we ate at. I didn't include it in my stories, but the one place that we ate at, Clary's, we ate breakfast there twice. We were there 3 days, 2 or 3 days, and we ate breakfast there twice.
Must have been good.
Oh, it was so good, but it was really, it was a little house. It wasn't anything special. But there was always, we got there early enough that it wasn't a big wait, but there was always a line out the door when we left.
Yeah.
But it definitely felt like there was something to it.
Yeah.
That pirate's house, it definitely felt like it was hard to discern whether or not I was getting feeling from just the area or the actual place that we were at, because it is just so thick there.
Right.
But it was the coolest little experience. The floors, like it says, are all plank. It creaks as you're walking through it, even as loud when it's busy and whatnot as it is. But
there's something about a creaky floor that just feels cozy.
It does. It was a really cool place. It was a cool experience. I can't wait to go back. Honestly, if we wanted to go back there every year, I'd be down.
Yeah.
I'd be so down. I feel like we could go a million times and see something new every time.
Right.
And when it says, you said something about that guy from Cobblestone.
The tour guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that reminded me, the little riverfront street. And the surrounding offshoots from it are legitimate cobblestone.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever walked on legitimate cobblestone. It's not easy.
I was gonna say, I don't think so.
It's harder than you would think.
Right. Yeah.
It was honestly,
because it's uneven.
Yeah, and I'm not super balanced anyway. It was terrifying. Not to mention the fact that we found what we call an adult slushy place.
Oh yeah.
They had I forget what it's called, but it was wall to wall. I want to say it was Wet Willies or something like that. It was wall to wall slushy machines, but they were all
with adult beverages.
Yeah. We found that place. And I
don't even drink, and that sounds good.
We went back there a couple of times. And so I got, the first one that I got had Everclear in it.
Ooh.
Girl. After drinking that and then walking on that was hard. And then we had to walk I want to say it was a couple miles back to our house that we were staying at. After that, it was rough.
I bet.
It was rough. Okay. On to my next one. Again, all of mine are in Savannah. The Old Pink House Restaurant and Tavern. I could have gone so far with this history. You should have. Finished in 1789, the old pink house was the home of James Habersham Jr., a wealthy cotton planter. His family history, it was like a whole deal. Like it was like a age-old story of like dad,
like old money stories.
Well, kind of, but it was like the family got divided over beliefs and whatnot. It was a whole thing.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, this was the home that he had dreamed of, that he hoped would unite his friends and family. And James didn't have the easiest life, as he was the oldest of 3 sons to a wealthy, well-to-do planter, who was a British loyalist. James and his brothers, John and Joseph, were not loyal to the crown, which was a huge disappointment to their father. James aided in the War of Independence by way of funding, whereas his brothers were more boots on the ground type people.
Mm-hmm.
After the war, he decided to build this home. 10 years after the completion of the construction, he passed under suspicious circumstances. The house still stands and is now a very popular restaurant. We didn't go there, but it was like very busy all the time.
Yeah.
But we made a stop there also. We had taken like a ghost tour, a walking ghost tour.
Yeah.
And that was one of our stops that we took around downtown Savannah. And if I'm remembering correctly, the story that we got on the tour about Habersham's death, and the story that I found online also, was that he had hung himself in the basement after he learned his wife was sleeping with the architect that had been hired to design the home. That basement is now called Planter's Tavern. Now, the source that I found states that the cause of death was actually reported as declining health. He's buried at Colonial Park Cemetery, and back then, someone who committed suicide would not have been able to be buried in consecrated ground. And I do remember her saying that on the tour.
Yeah.
However, he's buried there with his, like, beside his dad, like in a family plot. So it's said that Habersham Jr. appears frequently now and can even be seen wearing his colonial garb while drinking ale. He has even carried on conversation with unknowing patrons, them thinking he was just somebody that was like totally into that era, you know?
Yeah.
Until he would just disappear in an instant. Employees have reported that they only encounter him between the months of October and March, as he was not a fan of the summer heat.
Don't blame him.
And it is miserably hot.
And I'm sure with it being on the water, it's very humid.
We were there in like, it was July, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was miserably hot.
Ugh. No thank
Anyway, he was not a fan of the summer heat. He often straightens the table settings and chairs. Candles will be lit unexplainably, as he loved the idea of candlelit tables. However, he's not the only spirit that roams this building. There is a Revolutionary War vet that visits the bar to raise a glass with patrons. There's also another spirit that will appear taking an actual solid shape. He orders a few drinks. And then after a little while, he'll exit the bar, walk into a nearby cemetery, and vanish.
Yeah.
There's also a female ghost that I remember hearing about on the tour. She's seen on the 2nd floor. One night after closing, a manager and a bartender were finishing up what they had to do. The manager informed the bartender that he had checked. The upstairs was empty. They were good to go. And then they heard a sound of a woman sobbing up there. When the bartender asked the manager if he heard it too, the manager looked at him and said, "Nope, and neither did you. We got to go."
Oh.
It's also said that you can see former servants and children wandering around. The servants are pretty mellow, maybe not even completely aware that they're not like there.
Yeah.
But the children are kind of a handful. They taunt the staff and even have hit some of the bartenders with wine bottles.
Oh no, we can't be doing that.
Right.
You gotta behave.
Women have reported being locked in the bathroom, and now it is said that the women's bathroom does not have a lock.
Oh.
To keep that from happening. But even so, women have said, like, even since it's not, like, there's no lock, that when they try to get out, it feels like someone's pushing the door and they have to, like, bust through the door.
Dang. My turn?
Yep.
So my next one is the Warren House. The Warren House was built in 1840 by Guy Warren, who was an agent of the Macon and Western Railroad and one of the first town commissioners of Jonesboro, Georgia. The house was used during the Civil War as a field hospital and headquarters for Confederate troops until the 52nd Illinois Infantry took possession of the house on September 2nd, 1864, to be used the same way. The front lawn of the home was the site of the Battle of Jonesboro, which is what led to the fall of Atlanta and the end of the Civil War. There are still signatures of Union soldiers on the walls of the downstairs parlor. During renovations that were begun by Sheriff Adamson in 1936, the wallpaper was being removed, and that was when the names of the soldiers were discovered. It was also thought that after several visits in 1935 and 1936 to the house, Margaret Mitchell used that as an inspiration for her novel Gone with the Wind. According to the blurb on hauntedhovel.com, a woman I knew worked there while it was being used as an office. She said she was carrying a box of files up to the attic when something pushed her backward. Just as she was about to fall down the stairs, another something pushed her back upright again. She quit that day.
Same. I would have. I've been out.
Yeah. None of the people who have worked there would stay by themselves. They would hear strange noises, and one woman's window shade flew all the way up by itself. The soldier that is seen on the grounds is not looking out the window, but stands outside the house overlooking the road. The house is on a hill. He is visible from the road, but has been seen many times and has red hair. Most folks who have reported seeing this soldier report him looking from one of the windows and holding a candle. In addition to the soldier, some people have reported hearing the sounds of men in agony and a military drum. There are also doors that open and close of their own volition. There have been some anomalies photographed and some recordings of disembodied voices.
All right. So the next one I have is the Kehoe House. This is an absolute gorgeous home. It's on Columbia Square, and it was completed in May of 1892 to be the home of William Kehoe and his family. This was one of the stops on our tour as well. It definitely houses a few spirits, and from what I can remember of our tour, they are quite mischievous. I also learned here that not everyone knows what haint paint is.
With what is?
Haint paint.
Oh.
And if you guys are new to the podcast and haven't listened to earlier things and you don't know what haint paint is, or if you don't remember, haint paint is basically like a blue colored paint that you would paint on like the roof of your front porch or, any of your porches. It resembles water, and it is said that like spirits can't cross water.
Yeah.
So it keeps them from coming in your house. It is said that some of the Kehoe children passed away in the home. This is now a bed and breakfast and has more than a few guests claiming to have seen or heard children roaming the halls. But most, if not all, of the stories just state that the children are playing and not really interacting with the guests. This leads me to believe that they are more of a residual haunting living in just an infinite loop.
Yeah.
I did read a story that said something about like the kids got trapped in like the chimney.
Oh, no.
And died. But I think I read that was debunked.
Oh, okay, good.
Guests have also reported the heavy smell of a perfume that would no longer be a scent that's used today. There have also been reports of sleeping guests being touched. So imagine waking up to someone like touching you.
No, thank you.
The tour guide that we had said that the kitchen cabinets will open and shut on their own, and that the doorbell will ring with no one at the front door. However, if you open the door, it stops. So it's almost like the person, whoever it was, I remember her saying it's like they for some reason got like outside and was trying to get back in. And that's why the paint was put in.
Yeah.
She also mentioned that she was explaining what paint was and said that it had to be blessed by a very specific like voodoo person, priestess or whatever.
Yeah.
For it to be effective. And I was like, that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's literally just blue paint.
Yeah. And it just meant to look like water.
That was it for that one.
All right. Let me put my glasses back down. Oh, my glasses are filthy.
I almost did this one, by the way.
Yeah, this one is, it's in Savannah, isn't it?
Yeah.
Moon River Brewing Company. Originally built as the City Hotel in 1821 by Eleazar Early, a Charleston, South Carolina native. It was the first hotel in Savannah and was also home to the first branch of the USPS in Savannah. And it also served as a branch of the Bank of the United States. So during its tenure as a hotel, there were many notable guests, including hero of the War of 1812, Winfield Scott, the first 3 Commodores of the United States Navy, Marquis de Lafayette, and naturalist James Audubon stayed for 6 months while he was trying to sell his books of wildlife sketches. The hotel was sold in 1851 to Peter Wiltberger, who renovated it and put a live lion and lioness on display in order to bring in more business, which I think is messed up. They had no business living in a hotel.
Right.
And the final guest of the City Hotel checked out in 1864. After this, the hotel became a hospital during the Civil War and treated both Confederate and Union soldiers. And at the turn of the century, the building housed lumber and coal. And once the use of coal was going out of fashion, the space was once again renovated in the 1960s and became an office supply store, which included a large printing press. It also served as a hospital again when Savannah had several outbreaks of yellow fever, and it is estimated that hundreds of people, primarily children, died on the upper floors during this time. The building sat empty until 1995, when it was purchased and renovated into the brewery and pub that it is today. The Moon River Brewing Company opened on April 10th, 1999. As far as it being haunted, there are many stories, and this includes the story of gambler James Stark and his murder in 1832. The story goes that he insulted Dr. Menace one too many times, who, and a lot of the jokes, a lot of the insults were anti-Semitic, and the doctor saw to it that a bullet would take care of Stark. Menace was acquitted of the murder after saying that he saw Stark begin to pull a gun, and no one really questioned it because no one really liked Stark in the first place.
Nice.
So Stark is said to be a vengeful ghost and has supposedly pushed a woman down the stairs. It is also believed that he is responsible for throwing liquor bottles, and some patrons have also reported being grabbed, hit, or pushed. The restaurant area is somewhere where servers have reported seeing glassware and silverware sliding off of tables on its own, or on their own. A figure of a woman dressed in 1800s clothing walked across the bar, and the bartender thought she was a reenactor of some sort coming in for a drink. But when she disappeared before his eyes, a hush fell over the room as several other patrons also saw her. She has also been seen by a manager standing at the top of the stairs, and the manager asked her if he could help her when she suddenly disappeared. There is also a ghost that is referred to as Toby, and he is seen in the basement. And while some see him as a negative spirit, others have reported that he is just a young child. A woman said that she was attacked near the back of the basement by this spirit. She felt someone choke her and push her. Another person reported being possessed in this back room of the basement, but I could not find any elaboration on that. Back on the main floor, some people have reported, some people have reported some unseen someone brushing against them while dining in the restaurant. Women have also complained of the bathroom being unnaturally cold, and some have been locked in one of the stalls. The third floor is also said to be haunted with a woman in white.
Because why not?
Yeah, because everywhere you go, there's a woman in white. And she's been seen by many different people, and she is one of the most well-known spirits of the brewery, and is often referred to as Mrs. Johnson. The third floor is also where many children died from yellow fever, and employees and patrons have reported hearing children talking and playing on this floor. When the building was being renovated in the 90s, the foreman's wife was shoved down the stairs on the third floor and fell to the very bottom of the stairs. After this, the foreman halted construction, left, and never came back. Other people have also reported being pulled or pushed on when they are on the stairs of the brewery, but particularly near the third floor, which is said to house the most aggressive of the spirits. The darkest energy is on the top floor of the brewery, which is the primary spot for yellow fever patients, and it is thought that the victims of the virus may still feel as though they are trapped in the feelings of hopelessness that they felt when they were in their final moments. There are the same stories of children talking and playing on the fourth floor, and the energy is said to be so bad on this floor that no one really wants to go up there, with many reporting feeling a sort of emptiness after being on this floor. The brewery doesn't have its own ghost tours. However, many of the local tour companies have the brewery as a stop on the tour. The brewery has also been featured on Ghost Adventures, because of course it has. And another one of my favorites, BuzzFeed Unsolved, which that was back in the day when Ryan and Shane were still on there. They now have their own YouTube channel called Watcher, and they still do paranormal investigations, if anybody is wondering where they went. Their shtick is that Ryan is an avid believer in the paranormal, and Shane is a firm skeptic. In all of their episodes and investigations, Shane hasn't been moved from this perspective yet. The two of them are hilarious.
I'll have to look that up. So my next one, it's kind of similar to your story, that last one. This is the Marshall House. This is a massive building that was built by Mary Marshall, who had inherited the land from her father, Gabriel Lever, who was a French cabinet maker. She had inherited this in 1851. During the Civil War, the Union used the house as a hospital until the end of the war. Throughout history, the house was used 2 more times as a hospital. And during the whole yellow fever situation, it was used then as well. In the late 1990s, the house underwent restoration. During this, workers found human remains while replacing floorboards in the downstairs. During an investigation that followed, it was found that the area was used as an operating room, and the bones found were believed to be the amputated limbs of Civil War soldiers. Now, this hotel has been featured on television shows and voted multiple times as one of the best places to stay, or the best place to stay, despite the ghostly inhabitants. Unexplained events happen all the time there. Faucets will turn on and off on their own. Lights flicker. Toilets overflow for no reason. Disembodied voices echo in the halls. On the 4th floor, it is said that loud noises happen in the early morning hours. They sound like a heavy object falls to the ground. Guests have witnessed doorknobs being jiggled like someone's trying to enter the room. In the room 306, the loud hall noises can be heard, and a ghostly cat comes out to visit. One guest said that while in the lobby, a young girl pointed at a painting of Mary Marshall and said that she had encountered this lady in the hall. Guests, which obviously wasn't her because she's long gone.
Yeah.
Guests have also reported the sound of a typewriter coming from the room that author Joel Chandler Harris stayed in. And then also a well-dressed man sits beside a window reading a book. And, as always, another lady in white floats through the halls. There is another spirit lady. This is a common theme in Savannah. Another spirit lady haunts the women's restroom and has locked in, women get locked in the stalls.
Yeah. So basically, don't pee in Savannah.
Right. There have also been stories of small children laughing and playing at all times of the day and night. You can hear laughing and skipping through the halls. At night, you can hear marbles and rubber balls rolling around. I did find one really disturbing story where a boy and his mother were staying in a room there, and the boy was in the bathroom while his mom was in the bedroom. The mom heard him playing and talking, and when he emerged from the bathroom, he was crying, saying that the little boy that he was playing with in the bathroom bit him. Upon review, there was no other boy in the bathroom, but there was a bite mark on this child's arm.
Oh, no.
Kid-sized bite marks are not an uncommon event that happens there. There have been many guests who have experienced that sensation.
That's crazy.
Amputee ghosts like to wander around there. One in the lobby wanders around with his missing arm in his hand, begging ghosts to find a surgeon. Some guests have complained of smells of rotting flesh that deodorizers can't get rid of. In the area where the operating room was, soldiers are still getting treated by docs. I wanted to include a few anonymous stories that I found on the web from this place. So this one says, we recently spent several nights at the Marshall House and had a couple of experiences. Unexplained noises and smells in our room and outside in the hallway, which brought about some unsettling, eerie feelings. We were told the floor and room was haunted. Our room was on the second floor with a courtyard view. We too heard the marble rolling sound, and hubby swears that he was awakened by what he said sounded like a child giggling in the sitting area. But when he turned on the light, nothing was there, and he just figured that perhaps he was dreaming. We really enjoyed our stay, but there was an overall sense of spookiness, and it was as though we were waiting for something to happen or appear, probably mostly due to all the hype that Savannah has about being a very haunted city. The next one says, I never got much sleep while we were there. I always felt uneasy and utterly creeped out at night in my guts and could not rest. Did hear some strange noises in the hall late at night, around 3 a.m. or so, what sounded like a hard rubber ball rolling along the hallway and bouncing. Also what sounded like a marble rolling and bouncing. And also a very loud crash in the hall, 3 a.m.-ish, almost like a body falling and hitting the floor. And no one was out there. We also heard what sounded like walking around the floor above us, but there is only the roof. Also very unnerving feeling of being touched while in bed at night, and I was completely awake. Touched on the inside of my lower leg, ankle, and butt area. This made me nearly jump out of bed more than once. On the last night that we stayed there, we noticed a strange smell in the room and the bathroom that we could not find a source for. It was almost like burned flesh smell combined with a slight sewery odor. Would like to hear from more people who have strange otherworldly experiences at this location. Another one reads, stayed here for 2 nights in a superior king room. Bed was very comfy and breakfast good, though the coffee wasn't great. Neil, the concierge, is a little treasure, recommending places to eat and booking our trolley tour for us. I have to say that I was worried about the ghostly activity mentioned in some previous reports, I'm a scaredy cat, but my other half was excited about something unexplained happening. The first night we slept right through. The second night I was woken from a deep sleep by a loud whirring noise right by my ear. It even made my hair move. We could hear what sounded like drums from a marching band for a while before it faded, and we went straight back to sleep. Bizarre. Strangely, this hasn't put me off returning to this hotel. Savannah is a beautiful place, and I wouldn't want to stay anywhere else. I didn't put in my notes. We didn't go in this place. Our tour kind of took us like across the street from it, and so we saw this building, and I feel like she told us all about the history of it being a hospital and all that. Mm-hmm. But like this building in and of itself is, you just look at it and it feels gross.
Yeah.
It was not a good feeling.
Let's see. So, plans for a tunnel through Chattanooga Mountain were started in the late 1830s, but due to a great panic, the construction was delayed for nearly 10 years. The intent of the tunnel was for the railroad to offer passenger and freight services. The tunnel was 1,477 feet long and considered to be an engineering wonder at the time. There is a second tunnel in Tunnel Hill that was constructed over 1926 and to 1928, and it is over 1,500 feet long. That's probably Daniel. This tunnel is still used today by CSX Transportation.
He said midnight, it's 11:52.
Yeah. The old tunnel was constructed as part of the Western and Atlantic Railroad and has been named as the first major railroad tunnel in the South. The first locomotive went through in 1850, but subsequent trains would sometimes become stuck and people lost their lives during these incidents. Despite this, it was still the fastest way to get supplies from Atlanta to Chattanooga. During the Civil War, whichever side held the tunnel had to guard against the other side blowing it up. At that time, though, dynamite hadn't been invented yet, which is also why the tunnel was so narrow. The original excavation would have been made much easier with the use of high-powered explosives. The tunnel was dug by Irish immigrants rather than the slaves that many believed dug it. At that time, the slaves were too quote-unquote valuable, and slave owners didn't want to risk losing them in a cave-in because they would be quote-unquote losing their investment. It is unknown how many people did die during the excavation process, as the railroad did not keep records of the Irish immigrants. Eventually, the tunnel was abandoned by the railroad and became Hobo Hilton during the Great Depression, until the state of Georgia attempted to bury the tunnel under tons of debris. But the town of Tunnel Hill rallied to prevent the burial and cleaned out the trash and reopened the tunnel to the public. Additionally, the area that surrounds the tunnel was a site for many Civil War battles, with the tunnel itself seeing much tragedy. Witnesses to the supernatural happenings in the tunnel have said that they have seen apparitions of soldiers.
Okay.
Is he okay?
There was a loud bang, in case you guys didn't hear that. Like, sounded like he threw something up against the side of the house.
What's he doing?
He's walking in the door now.
Anyway. So witnesses to the supernatural happenings in the tunnel have said that they have seen apparitions of soldiers, lantern lights, and phantom campfires. Some have even reported experiencing the scent of rotting flesh, and others have said that they have heard blood-curdling screams. The primary witnesses have been Civil War reenactors, but other visitors to the site have also experienced some of these as well. According to southernspiritguide.com, there are at least 4 books and many articles on the high levels of activity in and around the tunnel. I wasn't able to find too many articles other than on all the spooky sites, but there were a few comments on this listing for the tunnel on hauntedplaces.org of some experiences. User Melissa said, I walked through this tunnel once with my daughter and 2 nephews. We got halfway through, and realizing how far it was, I told everyone we should leave. I picked up my youngest nephew, who was about 3 at the time. He said, why are we leaving? Because they're coming. We were the only people in the tunnel at that time.
Gross. No, thank you.
Another experience from Scott Wales. I grew up in Tunnel Hill, and I only went to visit this place one time. That was all it took. Myself and 4 of my friends snuck into there late at night when we were 13, 14, or 12 to 13 years old. Once we got in, the motion sensor lights came on. We walked about 3/4 of the tunnel, and as we kept walking, the lights at the front end of the tunnel started turning off one by one. I'm guessing because no motion had been moving past them. Well, we took that as a not so good sign. When we started walking back, the same thing started to happen, and we heard the sounds of a horse walking on concrete, and it got closer and closer. Eventually, it turned from walking to a trot, and we started jogging, and then it turned into a sprint, and we sprinted for the gate. All of the lights coming on, one after the other, as we passed them. Weirdest and most scared I've ever been in my life.
Yeah, I probably would have shit my pants.
There were a few other stories from people who either visited or grew up in the area, but I'd be here all night if I wanted to read you the entire comment section. So,
all right. So I think this is my last one. Yes. All right. So this is the story of Alice Riley. So this story stuck with me from our tour, and I promise if you take a tour or listen in on one while walking around the city, you will hear the story being told in Wright Square, aka the Hanging Square. The story is about a woman by the name of Alice Riley, who was the first woman to be hanged in Georgia. She was an Irish immigrant who came over with 39 other Irish servants. She was hanged for committing the first murder in the colony. She was a servant to an asshole of a man, and she fell in love with a man named Richard White, who was also a servant. The man they were assigned to was named William Wise. He was an unpopular cattle farmer who had come over from England. He was known to be untrustworthy and pretty sketch. He claimed that the young woman, I worded this weird. There was a young woman who was always accompanying him, that he claimed was his daughter, but it was later found out that she was actually a prostitute. Mm-hmm. When he got to Savannah, the founder of Georgia, James Oglethorpe, sent him across the water to work on a cattle farm. It was there that White and Riley were assigned to Wise. Wise had been sick and was bedbound, so the couple were to take care of his hygiene, and apparently that was a pretty hard job. Alice was in charge of bathing him, and Wise would make inappropriate comments at her. This made the next decision pretty easy for the couple. They decided that the best chance that they had to live a happy life was to take out their employer. In March of 1734, his head was found in a large pail of water with it says neckerchief, still tied on his neck. I lost my spot. Okay, anyway. So they were when he was found, the couple, they tried to run, but someone saw them running and they got caught. While White was hanged immediately, but apparently Riley was pregnant, so she wasn't hanged until after she gave birth. Some stories say that they did not know or did not wait for her to give birth and hung her while she was still with child. Now, she follows pregnant women and mothers with babies and tries to take the babies. Other stories say that she was a witch and, in true Hocus Pocus style, cursed the city of Savannah and the citizens. And because of this hex, that's why you find Spanish moth. Spanish moth only grows on one side of the trees in this particular square, which I do remember. It was weird. It was like just one side. But I think truly it's got something to do with like where all the moisture and all that was, or the way it's
the way the sun shines on
science.
it. Yeah.
Also, in the story when she was hanged, apparently it took 3 days for her to die, and then she mysteriously disappeared from the noose.
Goodness. A, they didn't do it right. And B, nobody was like hanging about, like making sure everything was chill.
Right.
I mean, she was the only one hanging about, but
I do remember hearing this story, and like the square that we were in felt very heavy, and this was like the one place that I could really hone in, and I did feel like a female presence.
Yeah.
But I couldn't, what I was seeing, and I don't know if it was because that's what I was seeing, or if I was led on because of the story, because I knew she was an Irish immigrant, but it was like long, red, curly hair.
Yeah.
Very, very beautiful. But it was like the coolest little square though. Like she kind of made a huge spectacle of this, because she was like, okay, I want you to stand right in this particular spot.
Mm-hmm.
And then she informed us that that's where she was hanged.
Oh, cute.
Yeah.
Me next?
Yep.
This is my last one. Strap in. It's a little bit of a long one.
Hit me.
If you can imagine. So, Lake Lanier was created in the 1950s when the United States Army Corps of Engineers built the Buford Dam for many reasons, including flood control, generation of power, and recreation. Lake Lanier spans 38,000 acres and attracts approximately 10 million visitors every year. It was named after Georgia poet and musician Sidney Lanier, and is also the primary water source for Gwinnett County. The body of water covers what was once a thriving black community called Oscarville, which was formed in the late 1800s. The town had many successful farmers, carpenters, and blacksmiths, but the more than 1,000 residents were eventually driven out by the white residents of Forsyth County. In this area, in September 1912, 18-year-old May Crow was found with injuries after being assaulted in the woods less than half a mile from her home. She later succumbed to her wounds. There were no witnesses to the incident. However, 24-year-old Rob Edwards was arrested. Shortly after, a mob of white residents dragged him from the county jail and brutally beat him with crowbars, shot him repeatedly, and finally dragged him to the town square where they mutilated his body, where his mutilated body was lynched. His wife, Jane Daniel, neighbor, Ed Collins, Jane's cousin, Oscar Daniel, and Oscar's cousin, Ernest Knox, who were both teenagers at the time, were all subsequently arrested. They were all convicted by all white juries, and then were all hung in front of 5,000 spectators. Throughout September and October 1912, mobs of white people would set fire to local black churches and black-owned businesses and forced all of the remaining black residents out of the county. Many years later, in 1987, for her show, Oprah Winfrey visited Forsyth County. The county had not had a single black resident in 75 years. And even as recent as last year, only 4.9% of the county's population is black, and 9.7% are Hispanic. As I mentioned, the lake was created in the 1950s when what was once Oscarville was flooded to create Lake Lanier. Local historians say that they didn't even bother to remove the town's structures, including the unmarked graves. But that said, there was an article by CNN that said that the structures were moved and trees were uprooted and all of the marked graves were moved. But this did leave the unmarked graves, and they were unfortunately left behind, according to a spokesperson for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. But is it haunted? Divers have reported seeing creepy things in the murky water of Lake Lanier, and some have told tales of catfish as big as Volkswagens. Which, I'm throwing this little story. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I may have. So, my Papa Jim once told me about fish on the bottom of the Cumberland, and how divers who were either making repairs to the old bridge or search and rescue would say that the fish were about the size of either a car or a school bus.
See, and I believe it too.
He was part of the Cheatham County Rescue Squad back in the 70s, so maybe he knew something we don't. I don't know. I don't know if I buy that there are actually fish so big on the bottom of the Cumberland that they can't really even move and would just sit there with their mouths open for prey to just waltz right on in. He also said that was why the county had a hard time finding and keeping divers. And I vaguely remember him saying that someone once got eaten. But I don't know if that was true. He was probably pulling my chain. But here I am. I'm going to just let that lore live on.
See, but I'm going to say, like, especially down closer toward the dam.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if they were just like these big ass fish. But like, do I think it's the size of a school bus? I find that hard to believe.
School bus, yeah, that's probably
even a short bus.
But like, you got to think they're sitting down there, and like at the bottom of the what do you read?
I just got a follow request from somebody that I would not expect a follow request from on Instagram. I'll tell you about it when we're done.
Okay. Anyway, you got to think about it. So they're sitting at the bottom of the dam, and the water is like constantly flowing through there, but it's also super murky and dirty and nasty. Yeah. And catfish are just going to sit down there and eat the trash. But like, they're going to sit down there and just constantly eat and just get bigger. Like we've seen some pretty big ones get pulled out of there.
That is true. I don't know. Maybe
I'm pretty
it's true.
sure that TJ has told me a story that him and his brother were in just like a smaller John boat on the other side of the dam. Mm-hmm. And like they hooked something one night and it like pulled them.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, it could be real, but I don't know. As I got older, I had a bit more of a hard time believing it. But,
I mean, I get it.
But maybe there's some legitimacy to it, and he wasn't just yanking my chain. But like I said, he was part of the rescue squad in the 70s, so he may know something that if he'd have taken a picture of it, because he took pictures of everything, and if there ain't no pictures that he took,
I mean, how's he gonna take it back then?
I don't know.
Take a picture underwater, and they weren't pulling that up. You ain't pulling something like that up.
I don't know. Even like a half-eaten diver,
they ain't gonna pull that up either.
Something. I need to see something. A witness statement, multiple witness statements, something.
She said pictures or it didn't happen.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
anyway.
Between the years of 1994 and 2020, when the CNN story was written, there were 203 people who died in Lake Lanier from either boating, accidents, or drowning. Allegedly, there have been over 700 deaths since it was created in 1956. In 2017, diver Buck Buchanan began telling local media that sometimes when he was out diving, he would feel body parts in the lake, saying, "You could reach out into the dark and you feel an arm or a leg and it doesn't move." The most popular urban legend surrounding the lake is that a Ford sedan was carrying two women, Delilah Mae Parker Young and Susie Roberts. They were coming home from a dance in town. They stopped for gas, but left without paying for it. As they were driving over the bridge that goes over Lake Lanier, they lost control of the car and went over the edge into the lake. A year later, a decomposed and unrecognizable body was found floating near the bridge by a fisherman out on the lake. no one could identify who the person was at that time. But in 1990, the 1950s Ford sedan was discovered at the bottom of the lake with Susie Roberts still inside, and they were finally able to identify the body of Delia May 30 years after she was found.
Okay.
Locals were already familiar with the girl, as she was and is frequently seen wandering near the bridge in the night with arms but no hands. Legend says she is just waiting to drag unsuspecting lake goers to the bottom of the lake, which I don't know how she's going to do with no hands, but
right.
That's
but
neither here nor there.
Let me just say this, that it's weird. I mean, I realize that like this has no relevance to my life, but like the names of these two people.
Mm-hmm.
My mother comes from a long line of Parkers. With a maiden name of Roberts.
Yeah, it is kind of weird.
That's odd. Anyway, continue on.
Others have reported seeing a shadowy figure of a man on a raft who inches himself across the water with a long pole and say that he is holding up a lantern to be able to see. It is also said that the victims of the lake, whose bodies have never been recovered, also haunt the lake, which really wouldn't shock me.
Right.
While we aren't sure if the lake is haunted, it sure does have a sordid and racist past.
Which I'm very ashamed.
Yeah, and it's not like it was just like one source that said that. It was a lot of them. And there's like full on articles about it.
Well.
And photos to go along with it as well.
Let me bring up my non-profit for the week. All right. So this week's non-profit is Healing for Heroes. It is, if I can get my computer to work, Healing for Heroes is an organization that is dedicated. Did you hear that? My stutter?
Oh.
That was bad.
I thought you were talking about him walking by.
No, it was my stutter. Anyway, is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting our military service members and veterans lead healthy, productive lives. Our objective is to connect the wounded service members as well as those with PTSD and traumatic brain injury with A.D.A. compliant service dogs.
Look at that. The service dogs are expensive.
Yeah. It says Healing for Heroes has dual purposes in that it serves the community by helping military personnel and veterans, as well as local animal shelters, by rescuing suitable dogs. Our military personnel and veterans, after being wounded, both physically and mentally, are able to move forward and live more productive lives with the assistance of service animals. So I liked it because it's helping our military, those who have served and are serving. Mm-hmm. It's helping them, but it's also helping shelters.
Yeah.
So,
two birds, one stone.
Right. And as always, there will be a direct link. So, that is it for the week. I will quit boring you with my awesome Savannah stories. However, eventually we will circle back around to Georgia and you guys will get so many more.
I was going to say, because like whenever I was doing my research, like I type every time I start out with the states, haunted places in whatever state. So I type in haunted places in Georgia. And it's like, I get a list. It's like the top 15 most haunted places in Georgia. And I open it and I'm like, why are all 15 of them in Savannah? Like, why didn't you just say most haunted places in Savannah?
Right.
It took me a minute to find a list that wasn't totally Savannah.
Right. So I will tell you though.
Sorry, I just bumped y'all.
If you're not familiar with it, just as an interesting read or a good movie to watch, there is a book/movie that is based off of events that have happened in Savannah. Mm-hmm. It's called Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, I believe. I didn't read the book, but I watched the movie shortly before we went to Savannah. It's so good. Definitely not kid friendly. Definitely not kid friendly. But it is a great movie to watch. And I'm sure book is even better because that's always the case.
Always better.
So, all right, guys. Well, once again, your weekly reminder about our May 11th little festival situation that we're going to be at in Ashland City. Heart of the Hollow. Come out and support and say hi.
Yeah.
Take a picture. I'm sure we'll post stuff while we're there.
Yeah, if we take pictures with anybody, we'll definitely post them.
We hope to see everyone there. While
we're gonna figure out what to wear.
We'll
We'll
wear our Wander stuff.
Maybe. What if I want to look cute?
Whatever. I'm not. Jeans and a t-shirt, bro. Depending on the weather, it might be shorts and a t-shirt. Y'all might get yoga pants and a t-shirt.
Maybe.
Anyway, you can go find the event page on Facebook.
And we'll probably end up sharing it as well on our Facebook page.
But while you're out there on Facebook, go ahead and cast your social media circle and follow us on Facebook.
Instagram.
TikTok.
X.
I almost said Twitter. Email us at wanderersofweird@gmail.com.
Oh, yeah.
Hit up that Amazon wish list.
Yeah. We would really be stoked on those desks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's it. Bye.
Okay, bye.